Hello, everybody. Welcome to the very first episode of Monsters Unleashed. Tonight, we've got Trisha Collins and we have Rob Effler with NCI. And tonight, we came on to talk with Trisha and let her tell you about her story of things that happened today, actually just a few hours ago. And this is 9/13 of 2025. So she had some very interesting things happen today in the land between the lakes, the LBL, home of the dog man. So without further ado, Trisha, to give us a little bit of background on what happened today, what you were doing there, and go ahead and tell us what's going on.
Well, we started our trip about 11:08 this morning. Got to land between the lakes on the south end about 11:40. We took a drive down Pine Piney Campground. Um, I did some research about some experiences down there. Ran into multiple cemeteries. Didn't see really anything out of the ordinary going down that way. Then we continued um, up a road called the Trace. Beautiful scenery. And I noticed a what appeared to be a footprint. So my husband stopped the car, got out, took a picture of it. Could see very defined toes, and about a foot from it was another print that didn't resemble like a normal Bigfoot print. It had like claw marks in it, kind of narrow at the bottom, almost like a dog print, but a it would have to be a massive dog, bigger than a wolf print. It was just very massive. So I took some pictures of that. Then we continued on, stopped at one graveyard that I had watched videos on, researched, and it was very eerie, very creepy, very quiet. Not a tree moving with the wind, not a bird. Heard a couple of frogs. That's about it. And it felt weird. So got back in the Jeep and we drove about 5, 6 miles on up the road.
Oh, shoot.
And there was another cemetery that we stopped at. We noticed there was a name, Andrew Jackson Smith. So beside the marker, there was a road, dirt road. We went up the dirt road about a quarter mile, and to the left, there was another graveyard. We stopped there. I noticed a tree that had looked like it had been scratched by something. Don't know if it was a deer sharpening his antlers, bear sharpening its paws, if just the weather had got to the tree. I've never seen weather get to a tree like that. And there was also a print in that tree that looked like something kind of just dug its claws in and it was kind of ripping back on the tree. Very odd to me. Never seen anything like that. And I've hunted since I was a little girl. Never seen a tree like that. So I continued filming around the graveyard. There was a lot of military built buried there. Old military, Civil War, World War I, World War II. And I noticed something moved in the woods, but those woods are so dense and very deceiving that you think you saw something, and when you go to look back to double check, it's gone. So I stopped filming, and my daughter said, "Mom, there's something interesting over here. Come check this out." So I walked with her, and I got halfway into the graveyard, and I'm shaking telling you this. That's how terrified this made me. Halfway through the graveyard, I get the hardest like burst of air to my ear, my left ear. And it was like something was saying my name because my actual name is Patricia, but it's like they accented the P. They were like very very powerful blow to my ear. Um to where my ear is still clogged. I've not been able to get my ear unclogged. I can't hear out of my ear. It is red. And it's at this side of my face, and this ear is actually hurting me right now. The pain started about an hour afterwards. Um, and I just felt there was chills up my spine when this happened. And it's like I felt like my heart just stopped at that moment because for years, my entire life actually, I've been into conspiracy theories, I've been into the unknown, I've been into ghosts, like I used to go hunt ghosts and everything, but I never had something like that happen to me. I ran to my husband. I told my daughter to run as fast as she could to get into the Jeep. And I ran to my husband. I said, something just blew in my ear. It was very loud. It was very powerful. It hurt. I said, I don't know what it was. There was nothing behind me when I turned around, but I felt something behind me. I felt something very powerful behind me. Um, I ran to my Jeep. I said, I'm done. I want to go home. I ain't never been scared of anything, especially not the woods. That made me want to go home. That made me want to do 120 out of that park and not care if I got pulled over. I was getting home. And it was weird because, like, the area was very quiet. There wasn't even a frog. There wasn't a cricket. There were no birds. There was no nothing. There was an odor, but there was nothing else. It was just everything was still. And I don't know what it was, but something hurt me. Something didn't like me being there, and I'm terrified. I was just telling my husband, I don't even want to go to sleep tonight. I'm glad that I experienced it and not my daughter. That would traumatize a kid. And this was just going to be a normal family joyride, just to, look at the terrain of the forest. Because me and Mike are going in a couple weeks to do our own little investigation. And I just learning about this dog man stuff. It's had me on my toes. It's had me scared. All these stories has had me scared. And I wanted just to go and just look around and just so I felt comfortable with the area. But I didn't get that. I got the opposite. I got terror. I'm absolutely horrified by what happened, and I don't even know how else to explain it. Like, it's almost unexplainable. I just know something physically hurt me in that graveyard. The graveyard's name was Mount Pleasant Cemetery, and I'd say there's probably about 40, 40 to 50 graves, old graves, all dated back into the 1800s. There was a couple 1900s. Some of them were didn't even look like graves. They just looked like somebody just put a rock there. And the one gravesite that I was by when this happened was just that. It didn't say anything. It was just like a rock that somebody had just put there. And I'm scared. I'm very scared. I haven't stopped shaking. I'm nauseous. I don't even want to eat. My head hurts. My ear is red. It's clogged. I can't hear out of it. My
It
face
looks
was
kind of
red.
red
Yeah,
on
it
camera.
was.
It looks kind of red.
It is. I tried to cover it up with a little bit of makeup. Um, but I know my blood pressure's up. I know. And my husband just looked at me and he probably thinks I'm crazy, but he could see the fear in my eyes. That he rushed to get the Jeep started so we can get out of there. My son stayed in the car. I took my German Shepherd with me, and he's really good at picking up scents on things. He senses a lot, and he could smell tracks really well. And he didn't whimper or anything. My son, he didn't witness anything, um, which I'm kind of thankful for that. But my daughter knew when I ran the way that I did, something was wrong. My chest got tight, and I knew something was there. Something was there. I just didn't see it, but something was there. I felt it, just didn't see it. And across from this graveyard, there's another road that leads to a path, and that road is closed. There's no sign that says why it's closed. It's just blocked off. It's locked with like a red and white striped sign on it. That's it. We also noticed that a lot of law enforcement and park rangers were standing. Well, there was one area that was had a barricade at the road, and it was blocked off. They wouldn't let nobody up in there.
Mm.
And that wasn't far from the cemetery. So I don't know if it relates. Could be a coincidence. I'm not sure. But all I know is this changed my life. This has horrified me. I don't think it's something that I'll ever get past, but it's something that I want to know what is there. What tried to harm me? What did harm me? I want to know. Like, I want to find answers to this. And it could be several things, you know. Um, there's a lot of history behind Land Between the Lakes with the Native Americans and the French Army and being flooded by our government. There's a lot of horrific history behind that land. And it's made me a firm believer that it's cursed. And there is something, whether it's a ghost from somebody that's passed away and buried there, whether it's a Bigfoot, whether it's a dog man, whatever. We don't know what is in that park. But there's something, and I don't think it's just one thing. I think it's multiple. And I want to know what. And I want answers. And I could tell this story to people around here. They're not going to believe me. But that's fine. They don't have to believe me because the only one that needs to believe is myself. I witnessed it. I experienced it. I was hurt by it. And it's something that for a while I'm probably going to live with nightmares about. But I'm going to find an answer to what's in there. That's my goal. But it's a beautiful park. Um, just a lot of bad history and a lot of cover ups. And I don't know, I just don't even know what to say. I'm so shaken up by it. Like there's friendly ghosts and then there's ghosts, that try to harm you, but then there's also, demonic entities and stuff like that. And I don't know what it was, but I know after it happened, about an hour later when I started getting the pain and the redness in my ear, I've never felt so raged and mad. I got into it with my daughter, and I've never been like that mad and angry. I couldn't stand the sight of anybody. I was telling everybody just get away from me and yelling, and I didn't feel like myself. I'm a very civil person. I'm a very calm person. I was not calm. I was not civil. I was to a level of anger that I have never experienced. I don't know if that has to do with what happened or not, but I just find it very weird that after all this happened, I'm hurting in my ear, and my head, it's red. I know my blood pressure's up, and then the level of madness that I got to, I don't know how to explain that other than whatever touched me put their energy inside me, and I don't want it. I don't want it. And would I go back there? Yeah, I would go back there because I want to know what it is.
Yeah, well, you was telling me on the phone right after this happened about about the hypersensitivity that you were having. Everything seemed louder and everything. If you want to share that with us.
Yeah, my daughter's about 5'2", about 91 pounds, something like that. And it sounded like she was probably a 200-pound man, to be honest. That's how loud it was. She was walking behind me, and it sounded like a grown man walking behind me. And it scared me so bad that I jumped, and it scared her. And then I scared her. And it's because everything just at that moment just sounded louder. My husband, he's 6'2", about 220 pounds, and you would have thought a Bigfoot was walking. It was so loud. Like it kind of rattled you. Like it felt like the ground was kind of shaking and everything was louder. Um, and I don't even know how to explain that other than what I just said. Like everything was super sensitive as far as the sound. Um, it did. I mean, she stepped on a stick and it sounded like she broke a thick log in half. That's how loud it was. And my first instinct was, whatever touched me is here. Like it's behind me. And then when I jumped into my Jeep, and my Jeep, it's not easy to jump into. It's 3-inch lift, and I'm
Yeah,
only four.
it's the Sasquatch.
Yeah,
She's
it's
got
named Sasquatch, and I'm only 4'11", so it's difficult for me to get up in it. And I got in it really quick when I heard her walking up behind me and didn't even know it was her. Like I said, I thought it was a grown man walking up behind me. So I jumped and I screamed, and then she screamed because my reaction scared her. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I thought you were something else. You just kind of walked up on me like a grown man. It sounded like it. But it definitely was an experience that I'll never forget. And I've had some experiences, but that nothing like that. Nothing like that.
yeah. You was also telling me about something following you through the park.
Yeah.
Could you
So
elaborate?
when we came out of Piney, I could be wrong on the name. I know it's Piney something. Pine Campground, Piney Campground. I'm bad with names. I apologize for that. When we went in on that road to that campground, me and my daughter noticed that we kept seeing a shadow. And the way it was appearing on the bank, we knew it was a bird. Okay, a big bird. I'm talking like an eagle or a falcon, something like that. This bird followed us the whole way to that campground. And my daughter swears it didn't follow us out, but I saw it. It followed us out. So it followed us in and it followed us out. When we would stop to look, it would stop. When we'd start going, it would start going. I've never seen a bird do that. Ever. Um, I also noticed, and I meant to mention this to you on the phone, but there was a lot of, I don't even know the names of those birds that they pick up like animal carcasses and stuff. Vultures. A
Vultures. Yeah, those are.
lot of vultures. They were just in like a random area deep into the woods. You could see them circulating deep into the woods in the sky. Like something was dead there. There was no road, no paths to get to where they were at. And that's wild. Which here in we're at Fort Campbell, and here we get a lot of that, but it's usually something on the road, not out in the middle of nowhere. So it was kind of unusual for us to see it like way back in the woods, circling like a deep section, deep holler in the woods with no access to get to that area. So that was kind of weird. very strange for me. There was a second there that I don't know if my eyes were playing tricks on me or not, because I've been doing a lot of research on this dog man stuff and just preparing myself and for what we could see or what we might not see. I want to go in with I want to be prepared. I don't want any surprises. And I had read a story about a dog man that was chasing a truck, and this truck was going about 65 miles per hour, and that dog man kept up with that truck. Was right on its tail, right on its tail. So driving down that road to that campground, I kept leaning over, looking in my side mirror, just to see if anything was, behind us. And there was one time that I saw something. Again, I don't know if my eyes were playing tricks. I don't think they were, because I was very calm, very calm. Wasn't scared at that time. And I looked back, and there was something standing up, like peeking through the tall like grass. 'Cause there's very tall grass. It was just peeking through it. So I turned forward, and I was like, "Ain't no way, ain't no way." I'm kind of a chicken when it comes to this dog man thing. I won't be though. And I turned and I looked again, take a double take, and I saw it again. And then I turned and looked again, and it was gone. But I couldn't make out any facial features. I couldn't make out if it had a snout. I couldn't make out if it had ears. I just know it was black and rather tall. Um,
Yeah.
the park was full of people today. Like there was a lot of tourism in there today. A lot of tourists. Um, for a second, I'm like, well, maybe it's because I think it's squirrel season right now. Maybe it's a hunter. And I got to thinking, I've hunted before. I've never seen a hunter dressed in all black. That's kind of dangerous. No, I don't think that is. I was just trying to tell myself, ain't no way. What is the odds that mm, I'm taking like a little family drive to explore just a little bit? And I've been researching this and talking about it with my dad. And I go in there the first time I've ever been in this area and see a dog man. Like the odds of that slim to none. But I also can't help what I saw. But like I said, I can't verify for sure if it had ears, if it had a snout, exactly how tall it was. It appeared to be tall, but I also was probably about a football field length from it. So I don't know. I don't know, but it was definitely an experience today. One that I'll never forget. I know in a couple weeks probably have another one, but I'll be better prepared for this next one. Um, I'm just gonna say my prayers and go in and full send and find some evidence of things because there's something in there, and I don't think it's just one thing. I think it's multiple things.
Well, through like my investigations and all the research I've been doing, I shared with you the other day on the phone because I talk to Patricia every day. Um, and we talk about our trip and what we plan on doing and stuff. But also, you know, the LBL, the people that was forced off of their property, and I mean, people had been there for generations. I mean, decades upon decades they'd been there. There's graves in there from early 1800s, and that wasn't the first people. I heard one person say that there are graves in there for people that fought in every war that we've ever had in excuse me, in this country. That there are people buried in there that have died in every war that's been fought in this for this country. And I mean that's pretty powerful. And cemeteries, when they flooded those two river basins, and they did move some of the graves, and there's still graves that are underwater. They have one area, and they call it Cemetery Island. And when the water's low, you can see the headstones there in the water. And I think that's pretty powerful. um my look on all of this is that I believe that land is cursed. You can't do what you did to these people and someone not curse that land because of it. I mean, Rob, you know as well as I do, there's people out there that are more than capable of doing things as such. And
Oh yeah.
I think that land is cursed. And they talk about the dog man. Okay, the dog man. Let's get straight. What dog man is? Dog man is a wolf-like creature between 6 and 9 foot tall. It just depends on what some of the reports some people have said. Dogman is not a werewolf. Okay. The difference between a werewolf and Dogman is that there's no change. A werewolf is a person that changes into a wolf through moon phases. Okay. And a Dogman is constant. That a Dogman is a Dogman. And I mean, until there's some kind of DNA evidence, just like the Sasquatch, we'll never know. But I think that maybe that dog man could possibly be a demonic being that is there to protect the dead. I mean, I read somewhere there were 260 some graveyards in that area. And my friend, I'm gonna tell you, that may be, for the size of that area, that most may be the most dense graveyard area in the United States. I mean, I don't know of any other areas that have that many cemeteries within the size of that. And I know the LBL is a huge area, but you know, there's not. I live in North Carolina. The area that I live in the general area, there's probably not that many graveyards. I mean, that's a lot of dead. And if you think there's that amount of graves there, then you think about the how much population was in that area that got forced out of there. So I think it's a strong thing, and that's why I want to go. I not only want to go because of the dog man and the Sasquatch sightings that have been there, and and the alleged deaths that occurred from dogmans and stuff like that. I want to go there to pay tribute to those people, and to let them know that their voices are still heard, because it's people like us that do what we do that remind the entire world that those people existed. And so if I can go there, I don't care if I have one single encounter or if I get one single footprint, but I'll pay tribute to the ones that were there before me. And and I hope that we do come out with some kind of evidence. Lord knows I spent enough money on this trip. So we're coming in very well equipped to investigate this. And I was thinking that I was going to do 2 days in there. I shared this with you, Rob, but I believe now I'm going to do 3 days. And I believe that I'm going to do 2 day trips, and then we plan on going one night and setting up, and preferably not too far from the vehicle. You know,
I
so
recommend that. After today, I
yeah,
recommend that.
yeah, because we're going in on October the 6th, which is the harvest moon. Which is the first full moon of October. And here I just said that the dog man doesn't change during moon phases and stuff like that. But the harvest moon is a strong thing in itself. Okay. a lot of stuff happens on the harvest moon. And you can, and everyone that's watching, you can look that up. A lot of encounters happen during a harvest moon. So, I mean, I think it's a good time to go in. I've already had several people tell me, "You're crazy, buddy. You're effing crazy."
Mhm.
But I mean, it is what it is. That's why I purchased a life insurance policy. So I plan on going in there to find out something. And but Rob, what's your take on Trisha's what Trisha said? I look, we can both look here and see her. I've been watching her face. Everybody's seen me looking. I'm looking at my monitor to the side here, and I've watched her face, and I've studied her body language and everything, and she's traumatized. This girl,
Yes,
I've
she
seen.
is.
So, I
And,
mean, I
in my opinion, I've got before I speak my opinion. Now the extra sensitive sensations, to sound and this, that, and the other. Did that happen before you seen something other at the edge of the graveyard or after?
It happened after. Well,
Okay, that that
did
no,
that.
no,
that
I'm sorry, I'm wrong. It happened before. It happened before. I saw the movement before, and then that's when my daughter asked me or said she found something interesting, and I followed her to it. And then the incident with the ear happened. And then things after it was touched, that's when things got very
this
weird.
is just my opinion. Uh, I've had so before I got into. I'm just going to be blunt about everything. Before I got into hunting boogers and monsters and things that supposedly do not exist, which yet still does, I got my start in paranormal investigations. I was a paranormal investigator for many years since 2007, and in 2012 was when I started doing the Bigfoot investigations and everything. But when I was doing the paranormal, I had a friend of mine, which was she's long past now. She was a she was half Sioux and half Blackfoot medicine woman, and she told me to sort of expect things like that, like what happened to you. And I said, well, what's up with it? She said, you're being protected by somebody. They're trying to warn you something's fixing to happen. In my opinion, if that hadn't happened when it did, whatever that you saw at the end of that graveyard could very well have been a dog man. And if that be the case, if he was circling like a shark, he was waiting for the right time to strike. Because basically that's what they do is they'll circle just like a shark. Prime
Yeah.
example: myself, George, and Tim of NCI. This was back in April of this year. We were over in Franklin, North Carolina, on we was checking some cameras that we put out. We was going to put out some more cameras and everything, and we got up there in the woods. And I mean, the woods sort of felt a little down, eerie, like something other wasn't exactly right. To make a long story short, we kept smelling something other that we knew good and well was not Bigfoot. This had a metallic blood type smell. It'd catch on the breeze every great now and then. And I mean, it would just circle just like a shark all day long. Now, here was the weird part. Well, Jerry Millwood was with us. I'm sorry, I left Jerry out. Jerry, if you're watching, I apologize, buddy. But
I got something to tell you about Jerry
George,
in a minute.
George and Tim basically took a bath in deep woods off to keep the flies and mosquitoes and the no-see-ums and stuff like that off. Well, Jerry and I elected not to do that. We were in the woods. It didn't make any difference how much of that deep woods off that Tim and George put on. The black flies were about to carry us off. And I'm talking flies about the size of your thumbnail. Solid jet black, kind of like what you'd find on something other dead, like a dead deer or a dead possum or a dead raccoon or something like that. After we reached a certain point, the flies came in, and it wasn't 10 minutes after that, we got smelling that old stench. And after we done what we needed to do and came back, we also found 3 dogman prints, as well as we found 4 or 5 juvenile Bigfoot prints. So we came to the conclusion that either A, the dogmen were being used as guard dogs to guard the juvenile Bigfoot, or B, the dogman had come in to steal the juvenile Bigfoot and eat them. That was only 2 conclusions we could come up with. We never got hardcore evidence, of either one because we couldn't find no hair samples at that time, and we couldn't find no blood either that we could use to, verify what we came to the conclusion of. Excuse me. But when we came back to that one particular area, the flies dissipated. And the whole entire time we were in there, you had the awfulest feeling you was being watched. We ran into one individual, and be brutally honest, this guy, his nerves was shot. In other words, he was vibrating so bad on his nerves that he could have threaded a sewing machine while it was running.
Mhm.
He said probably 16 words to us, and down the trail he went, and he vanished in the woods. We thought, where's he going? Because he followed the same path that we did. And where we was parked, there wasn't no vehicle or anything. We don't know where this individual went. Only thing we got out of him at the time, he was digging wild ramps in the woods. And for those who don't know what wild ramps is, it's kind of like a cross between an onion and a leek. And they only come up in the spring of the year, and they stay around for a couple of weeks, then they die back off. They're real good eating. Mountain peoples have eaten them for years.
Yeah, we've
And
ate our share of them.
oh yeah, I've eaten my share of them too. I mean, you can fix. I mean, I'm not going to go into a whole culinary show on this, but you can eat them raw, or you can cook them with eggs or onions, or whatever you want to cook them with, and they're real good, even with soup, beans, and cornbread, and a big old tomato. But here's the thing: if somebody's got a backpack full of rounds, you can smell them at 30 yards easy.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We never smelled any rounds, period.
You
So it's
smell them
all
coming.
standing there scratching her head trying to figure out what's this cat doing? Where's he been? And his tennis shoes looked like he just had bought them off the shelf at the shoe show. There wasn't a speck of dirt on his shoes or anything. We don't know where this guy came from, who he was. He wouldn't disclose nothing. He just said, "What are you boys doing?" I said, "We're just up here just hiking around just for the fun of it." He said, "Well, I'm digging ramps. If you want to know where a good ramp patch is at," he said, "it's up yonder." He said, "About 60 more yards." Okay, thank you. And buddy, he was gone. But the whole entire time, I mean, other than that individual, we found those dog men prints. It was just exactly like something other was circling us
Mhm.
the whole entire time, just like a shark. So, only thing I can figure out is some other in that graveyard. Evidently, I'm trying to be nice about it, trying to settle your nerves. I'm not feeling you full of sunshine. I'm just telling you, what I've experienced and run across before in the past, I think something or other told you to be careful. And that's what they was meaning, because if that's what you was seeing at the far end of that graveyard out there in the woods, it very well have been a dog man, because you remember in 1982, there's a family of 4 got massacred in the LBL, and they found that little old girl about what? What was it, Mike? About 30 feet up in a tree?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pieces of her up in the tree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
So,
evidently something or other didn't want that to happen to you. So
But
I'm
if you
saying
go and if you go and
what happened.
research that, if you go and research about that massacre, you're not going to find anything.
no,
And
me
and
go.
and,
No.
and the thing about it is that campground is no longer open. They
No, it
closed
is
it down
open. I
where the thing happened at. That campground is no longer open. I mean, I've watched a bunch of things. I mean, I think that some of the information is throwing you out there, but like there's been a couple people that spoke up. They shut that campground down. Another YouTube channel, Hellbent Holler, they went in there for their
Mm-hmm.
investigation, and they actually went there because they had some inside information on where everything actually went down, and they showed the
Right.
area. They showed the area in their video, and like they even went in and cut down the telephone poles. Like you can still see concrete pads in there, and in
Mm-hmm.
the campground area where the campsites were and all that stuff. But that is completely gone. Everything is gone. And mind you, that was a brand new campground area when that happened. That place hadn't been open for like a little over a year. And now the
Mm-hmm.
road that goes to it is gated off, and it's labeled as restricted area. So
Well, here's the $1 million question on the whole shooting match of the LBL. Number one, nobody probably is not going to officially know the whole true story on anything.
um,
But if there's not any truth in some of the stories that's come out of there, some of the attacks, some of the encounters, and sightings, and first one thing and another, what are they hiding? Why are they restricting walking privileges in certain areas if there's nothing to it? That's just like I've talked to a few U.S. Forest Service rangers and personnel here in Western North Carolina. I've mentioned cave systems and mentioned Bigfoot to them, and they'll tell you one story until one or two certain members of the Forest Service walks off. Then they'll turn right around and look at you and go, "We know what you're looking for. You best be careful."
mhm. Well,
Now, if there
what was
wasn't
it?
anything to it, and it was all figments of people's imagination, a big elaborate hoax, and first one thing that, what are they hiding? If there's nothing there, why should they be secret squirrel and hush hush on everything? I mean, common sense logic, it doesn't add up.
I'm sorry if y'all keep hearing notifications on my phone. What I was going to tell you there real quick, and we'll get back to it. That I did invite Mr. Jerry Millwood to come and see us on the show, to come and sit with us
Oh,
and listen to
cool.
all this. But he messaged me back, and he says I'm in the woods up around the South Mountain Game Preserve. He says
Hmm.
extreme noise and light discipline, and there's only 2 of them up there. I don't know who he's up there with right now. And he sent me 2 videos, which I'm not going to play, but and he said he's not going to be out till around 1 a.m. And I told him if it starts getting bad up there to send me some GPS coordinates, so at least we know where they were at. because you just don't know. You just don't know
No,
when you
you
get in
have
the
no
woods.
idea what you're going to run into when, even in the daytime. My group, NCI, everybody asked us, said, "Why do y'all always go in daytime?" Well, it's not that we're afraid of the dark. I don't like going into anywhere blind. I want to know what I'm getting into. Want to know
Hmm.
the area, and if something other was to happen to go sour, and you needed to retreat for some odd reason or another, you need to know which way to run.
Yeah,
Because if you
yeah,
if you go into an area that you're just completely teetotally ignorant of, you've got rock cliffs in places, you've got rattlesnake dens in places, depending on what type of the year you got, and anything can happen and go wrong. And you running through the woods, if your light goes out or whatever else, trying to, retreat and backtrack away from danger. In daytime, you can see a lot more. You can get a lot more evidence, and you got a better grasp of what's going on.
yeah, yeah. That's what our trip that we're going in. Like I said, I think we're going to do 2 days. With what happened with her today, I believe that 2 days, at least 2 days. I don't have much time. I took PTO time for work and stuff like that, and but 2 days wouldn't actually be enough for me. But that's what I'm going to have. And during those 2 days that we're in there, we're going to look around and try to determine where we're going to do our night investigation. But I plan on not being very far from my car. And whatever trail I walk in there with, I'm going to be putting those illuminated thumbtacks in the trees all the way to where I'm going. So if I need to
Absolutely.
run out of there, my light is going to shine on those and light my path all the way back straight to my truck. I'm not
Oh
going,
yeah.
I'm not walking a quarter mile into the woods. I'm going in, I'm sitting down, I'm setting my tripod, my night vision, and my voice recorder, and we're going to sit right there and see if we get any responses. Because, I mean, we had already walked that area prior to that. So we just want to know if we're getting any night responses in there. And I'm not going in there. I'm not going in there empty-handed either. We'll just leave that at that. So,
Oh yeah.
that could
It,
be a
it does.
baseball
It
bat, by
doesn't
the
pay
way.
to. Yeah, it doesn't pay to go in there, empty-handed on anything, because you never know what you're going to run into on any investigation that you go on to, any expedition, daytime or nighttime. You could
Hmm.
run into a pack of coyotes. You could run into, you get accidentally get between a mama bear and her cubs. You don't never know. And plus, on top of that, certain areas, as bad as I hate to say it, you are going to run into some homeless people, and some of them that's strung out on dope, and then you're going to run into feral people. And a lot of people thinks, well, there's no way in the world feral people can still exist. Yes, indeed, feral people still do exist out here in these woods. People don't go back in the woods like they used to. But back
No.
years ago, talking to your grandparents, the first one thing the other. Back then, in order to feed your family and everything through the wintertime, they went and stayed in the woods for like about a month, month and a half. They'd come back with deer, they'd come back with squirrels, they'd come back with raccoons, they'd come back with bear, you know, just about anything that the environment on the location of where they lived offered. That's what they came back with, and that's what they survived on through all these harsh winters and everything. These guys today, they don't go back that far anymore.
Yeah.
Nobody knows exactly what's out there. There's still land if I mean, you can get up on the Blue Ridge Parkway. I live right next to it, within about 2 miles from my house, and you can get up on some of these overlooks and look off in places where there's no houses, and there's places in there. If something other wanted to hide for years upon end, and for decades for that matter, and never be seen, never be know anything about it, they could. I mean, using Eric Rudolph as example. Granted, we all know what Eric Rudolph did, but just using him for example, there at the last, I'm pretty well sure somebody was helping him. But he stayed what 36 months out there in the woods, and the FBI couldn't get a hold of him, couldn't find him, didn't know which way to look or anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Now
Yeah.
you take one man that can do that, and I mean he's modern day man. Think of what a creature that's been raised in the woods all of its life knows the smell of every leaf, every tree, knows what's natural and knows what's foreign. You're not going to fool him.
No, you're not. I have stood on top of those ridge tops and looked down into hollers and into the valleys and stuff like that. And I look at land and I think, you see it, it's so dense. There's no roads in that area, and there's a good chance that no one's ever even set foot into that area other than maybe Native Americans. And so
Exactly.
why not? So why not? I mean, the government gets all these lands. My big thing of it is, yeah, they want it when they dammed those rivers off, they wanted to generate power. Okay. I
Right.
understand that. You can't let a dime hold up a dollar. All right. So they
Right.
needed more power to strengthen the power grid back then. And I understand that. So the people that were in the direct path of where the dam was going to be and the water was going to rise to a water table. Well, guess what? We're talking about the LBL because the LBL is still there. I mean,
Hmm.
yeah, there's lakes there now. There's two lakes there now. But why did they need all of the LBL? Why did they need all that if they were just going to build two lakes? So now you go into the LBL and
Good question.
there's farms and there's homes that are still there and all this stuff. Why did they need all that? Why did they displace thousands of people, thousands on thousands of people? Excuse me. And I think that there was something there. I think there was
Oh
something
yeah.
there and they didn't want nobody there. And there's still something there and they still don't want people there. They restrict areas. They close off. Oh, excuse me, my back's killing me. I've moved a bunch of furniture today, but they close off and restrict access to cemeteries, and it was
Hmm.
it was in their agreement that they would not do that. That the cemeteries would remain public access no matter what, but they have blocked off roads. I don't know. Look, when I travel for work. I'm all over the state of North Carolina and most of Virginia. So I have a lot of seat time. So if I'm not
Hmm.
talking to Trisha, I'm listening to somebody's podcast. I can guarantee you. I don't listen to the regular
Right.
radio. I'm listening to podcasts or I'm talking to Trisha. And so all these podcasts that I've talked about, I don't know how many of them has mentioned about the cemeteries that have been blocked off in that area and restricted areas. Well, they just told you today, Trisha, if they caught you on a road that you're not supposed to be on, what they say would happen.
She said, depending on the mood of the ranger or the law enforcement officer, because she said that Land Between the Lakes has their own like law enforcement, that you could be fined or arrested on the spot. Um, on the
Hmm.
cemetery thing, there's a lot of cemeteries you can get to, but there's also some that they're not. There's no signage for them. Like the ones I went to today, they were out in the obvious. Well, except for the one that happened to me at, but there was a sign that said, "Hey, this cemetery, this way." But I also saw some that you had to be really looking deep into the woods to see them. No way to really get to them unless you walk up like a bankside and up the hill to get to it. And And then you go a little bit down the road, there's a road that could possibly lead to that cemetery, closed. The lady also told me that there's only one road in the park that's closed. And she um can't remember the name of it. But she kind of showed me on the map. That's not true. I saw at least a dozen of roads closed off that you couldn't get to. Um, so well, like you said, like why are they covering things up? I today before we entered the park, we stopped to get all of us something to drink, and I asked her, I was like, hey, we're new to the area. How far is land between the lakes from here? And she's like, oh, about 10, 15 minutes. Okay. And I said, yeah, me and my dad are planning on hiking up there in a couple weeks, and I just want to go to see what, we're up against, the terrain. And she's like, oh, it's beautiful. I highly recommend you drive the trace, which is the run that or runs north to south or south to north, however you want to take it. We did south to north today, and majority of what I saw was in the north end. Um, well, yeah, I'll get to that in just a second. But I said to her, I was like, yeah, um, we're new to the area. I've been researching about the history about it. It's kind of sad, very sad actually. And she looked at my son. She goes, are these your mints? And I was like, no, they're mine. I said, a lot of the research I've been doing has kind of scared me a little bit, and I'm nervous in my stomach, and mints help. And she goes, the history. And then she just kind of drooped her head. She goes, well, have a nice day. She knew what I was talking about. She shut it down very quick. Very quick. And I've read stories, people speaking up saying that they've went around asking natives to the area stories about what's happened there, if they've had any experience, and everybody gets so defensive, like they're ready to fight you on it. They make you leave. Even the park rangers, they want to like threaten you over it, and it's just weird. We deserve that transparency. We deserve to know if we're out vacationing in this park, we ought to know what's in there so we know how to protect ourselves.
Yeah, why am I going
Or
to take my
how to,
grandchildren into that place and like take a possibility of finding them someone finding one of them up in 30 foot into a tree
yeah,
just
and
because the
listening to
government covered it up.
exactly, and listening to
Mhm.
what Rob said about how, that was kind of a sign, like somebody was there protecting me because it could have been circling me as a shark. Like it makes me really grateful and blessed that whatever it was protecting me was there. Yeah, it hurt me, but if that's the case, I'm thankful and grateful and blessed that it actually happened to protect me. And I just while you were talking about that, I heard you mention something about a smell. And when we went through, and I probably should have said this earlier, but my mind is like in 100 different directions right now because of all of this. Um, when we drove up the road to Piney Creek, about halfway, I'd say probably about 5 miles up on that road, we got a bad odor. I mean, it just overtook the car. I had my German Shepherd with me. My kids kept saying, "Oh, it's his breath." Like, listen, I know he's got dog breath, but it's not that bad. He chews dental bones. I put stuff in his water for his teeth. It's never not like this. This had a metallic smell to it. It was like a metallic with like a septic smell, like sewage.
Yep.
And I was like, all right, let's just test this theory out. I rolled up the windows, drove up the road a little bit, kind of disappeared. But at that graveyard that was on that other end, the north end, because the pine campground is in the south, but that graveyard I was at was in the north, and that same smell was in that graveyard. My dog wasn't outside for that; it was in the Jeep. So
Told you.
I was going to ask you if it was like a metallic with like a sewage smell.
Water
Um,
smells like dried blood mixed with something other dead.
yeah, dry blood with like a copper smell. I mean, it made me nauseous. it made me
Yep.
very nauseous. Um, and I just want to say thank you for, sharing that with me. But that's also still a scary thought to know that.
Oh yeah.
And it's weird because it was a family of four of us in that Jeep,
Mm-hmm.
two kids, two adults, and a dog, but family of four. And I just wondered, did this thing follow me from the south to the north? Is it true
It's
that, I
possible.
mean, because some people say, I've read certain things that some people think they portal, and I don't know what to believe on that. I'm going to need to read more into that. Is that the case? Or is there more than one and they've communicated?
Smoke signals.
Oh,
And
there's
you
Smoke,
know,
yes, smoke signals.
oh there's several dog men and Bigfoot both in the LBL from the reports I've been reading. I've never been there myself. If things goes as planned, we're going to be with Relic Films at Greg Ogles in first week of November up there in the LBL, and it's going to be quite interesting. I think we're going to do some good up there and get some good evidence, and we're going to hit everything up there with everything in the world that we've possibly got. We're going to take every stick of equipment we got. I've got some 360 cameras that shoots. If I can get cell phone signal, they'll shoot straight back to my phone.
Well, I
And
can tell you
I
there's
think,
no cell phone service. There's none.
yeah, that's what I've been told that there's, it's basically cell phone hell up there. But
Mm-hmm.
I think Greg's going to take Starlink, and if I can get one camera to ping back, I might be able to get those other cameras to ping into that one and transfer the uh, transfer the signal over to my phone. I don't know how well that's going to work, but we're going to try it and see. And Tim's going to bring his thermal, and we're just going to set up a perimeter and basically try to get something other to come to us instead of us going to it.
hmm I plan on taking my drone. I don't know if it's going to be legal to fly in there or not, but at this point, I don't really care. I mean, I'm licensed to fly the drone, so I plan on taking it and getting some aerial footage of some of the areas and stuff like that. Particularly, maybe some aerial footage above some of the restricted roads that you're not allowed to be on, and get up a little higher and take a peek and see what's beyond that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. And
Technically speaking,
they're getting ready to shut down more roads too. They're getting ready to do um I know you watched that documentary that I watched, and as soon as that guy mentioned government, those blacked out Black Hawks uh flew straight over him.
MIB,
There was black Chinooks today flying over. Black
yeah,
Chinooks.
MIB.
Okay.
If they wasn't hiding something other, why? That
And they're
is the
getting ready to
million
shut
dollar
it down.
question: is why?
right.
The
Well, I
roads are
mean,
going to
it's
be
like
shut
the
down
question.
September something. September 26th to October 2nd. So when you get here, those roads are just going to be reopened.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like you said, why? I mean, why did they need all the LBL? Like I said, I mean, they only needed
Exactly.
certain areas of it. Why did they have to take all of the land? There's just so many questions that we'll probably never have the answers for because we don't have that kind of clearance. And
No,
but I mean, it doesn't make sense to me why they would displace so many families and cemeteries, move cemeteries and stuff. It, I guess the world will never know. Um,
And it's
but
well,
it's
it's
like the
short
people
lived.
like
whole,
us.
Hmm.
It's people like us that, like I said, that we're in here and we're pounding the earth and we're looking for answers. And when we find answers, no one wants to believe us. I mean,
Exactly.
there is a reason. I heard one guy say one time on a video. He's like if you have a clear picture of a Bigfoot, he says it's fake. He says,
Hmm.
he says the real ones, the real ones, you don't get clear footage because something doesn't allow you to have clear footage. And there was another gentleman. I don't remember where I heard this at. Oh no, I know where I heard this at. It was at the Marion Bigfoot Festival. I was standing there with
Hmm.
Sasquatch Recon, was talking to them,
Right.
and this elderly gentleman walked up to us, and he was talking to us, and he's a believer, and he asked the one gentleman there with Sasquatch Recon. He said, "Let me ask you this." He says, "If God could give an eel, a 3 foot long eel the size of a Coke can, um, the power to knock a horse stone cold unconscious," he says, "why couldn't Bigfoot have the capability to um, conceal itself like a chameleon, basically?" Chameleons have the power that they can be on a tree branch and they'll just change color to the color of that tree branch. You stick them on a rock, they'll change color and be the same color as that rock. I mean, then I've heard stories of people talking about it being translucent, almost translucent. Them seeing it silverish fur, translucent
Hmm.
fur, and stuff like that. Is that a phase that it was going through at the time that they spotted it to change its color to its environment, the word whatever it was at? I mean, I don't know. I didn't see it, but I mean, it raises a question. It really does,
Oh yeah.
and I think that guy he had a really good hypothesis on it. That
Hmm.
why couldn't it? Why couldn't it happen? I mean, there's just so many different sightings out there. People claim they're reddish color, cinnamon color, they're black, they're brown, they're silver, they're gray, they're white. I mean, why couldn't it be all of that? That's my
Absolutely.
question. And
Well, the
and
thing
that
of it
would
is with what you just said about those about them blending into their environment. To give everybody a prime example, you know, I'm sure both of you has been in the woods and deer hunted ever since you was big enough to for your daddy to let you go in the woods by yourself hunting, or or he went with you. If the light conditions are just right, a black bear, if he does not move,
you don't see him.
will stand there next to a laurel bush in the right light conditions. Because I've had this happen myself, and I've even had a 6 point buck vanish right in front of me because I took my eyes off of him to readjust the gun to my shoulder to see if I could get a better shot than what he was presenting. I've had a black bear, also, like I said, a 6 point buck. I mean, broad open, vanish before my very eyes due to the light, and he didn't move. He just blended in with his background, and I was like, "Where did they go?" Then, if you kept watching in that same area and didn't take your eye off of it, eventually curiosity is going to get the better of that creature, and it's going to move. And
Hmm.
when that bear moved, and when that 6 point buck moved, I said, "Oh, there you went, you little devil! You hid on me." So if they can do that, good and well, Bigfoot or Dogman, either one can do the same darn thing because they've got nothing better than time on their hands. They have nowhere else to daggum go. They're just going to sit there and wait on you because human nature is going to tell you you're going to eventually move. You're going to give up. You're going to go home or whatever the
Yeah,
case may be. Or if it gets too dark to see, they know you're going to leave. They know you're not going to sit there all night in one single solitary spot.
I've
Now,
walked
on the
into it.
other hand,
I've walked. Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. On another hand, I have seen trout in a stream hide, and you know him good and well. They couldn't go downstream and they couldn't go upstream. You take your eye off of it, they blended in with the bottom
Hmm.
until
Yeah,
they chased the fly, the spinner, or the worm. You didn't know they was there.
I've walked into a field and look at that whole field, deer hunting. Look at that whole field
Hmm.
and not see anything until I seen an ear move,
Yep.
and then it was clear. You know, I
Hmm.
mean, they just animals in the forest, including people. Okay,
Yeah.
I have been in the woods and hunting in blue jeans and not any orange that I was bow hunting or something. I have a
Hmm.
stepbrother that he hunts. He don't wear any camo. He'll wear a blue shirt, pair of blue jeans. I mean, just whatever. And he goes in hunting. He's very successful because he stays
Hmm.
still. And
Yep.
and I think it's the illusion. It's the illusion when you're in the woods of all the foliage and the bushes and all that stuff that
Oh
it
yeah.
has a tendency to break you up. And
Hmm.
and if you're in camo, like I hunt turkey, I'm really big into turkey hunting. And I wear my ghillie suit. And I promise you, if I get in the woods and I lean against a tree, you could probably walk 20 foot in front of me and not see me, you know. And that's just because I'm going to sit there, I'm going to sit still. And
Hmm.
I mean, as I've trained myself to do that, because if you're hunting without a blind, turkeys, um, and you probably know as good as well as I do, all one movement of your finger and that turkey looks right at you, you know.
Oh yeah.
So and it's the same thing with the Sasquatch and stuff like that. I mean, they're there and they're watching you. The dog man, the Sasquatch, um, they're there, they're watching you, and most of the time you don't notice them unless they move, because
Exactly.
most eyewitness accounts that I've heard of that they've seen something move, and that's what's caught their attention to it. And
Yep.
It happened
behind
to
a
me.
tree.
So
In my book, in my book, my new book, you have my first book there, Echoes in the
I
Hollows in the
do.
Shadows of the Mountains. Um, in that book, I share some stories of people that in North Carolina. That book's mostly based out of North Carolina. Um, some stories on there of sightings people's had, and so on. Um, and then in the next book that's coming out October the 1st, and it's called In the Shadows of These Mountains, Echoes in the Holler. That they
Hmm.
One book goes with the other. It's a series. So
Right.
I have a story in there that happened to me when I was about 17, and it was in West Virginia. Um, I was where I lived. I lived in a little coal camp house. It was the last house remaining in an area that was called Claremont, West Virginia, which sat between
Mhm.
Thurman, West Virginia, and Thayer, West Virginia, which are both forgotten towns. You know, but
Right.
Claremont, we were the only house, and it was like 5 miles to Thurman and like 7 miles to Thayer, and we sit there in the flat middle in the dirt road. And so when I was young, I wasn't driving or anything, and I had my stepfather. He had an old pickup truck, but I was going to go deer hunting one morning, so I had to get up at like 3 a.m. and start walking. And the deal was is if I shot something, then I would walk home. I would drag it down to the edge of the road someplace, and I would walk back home, and my stepdad would go and get it. He would take me back up and go and get it. But he wasn't taking me hunting and dropping me off, which was, I mean, that's just how people were.
Oh
So I
yeah.
had I had if I got a deer, by God, I worked for it. I
Yes,
really did.
sir.
So I had walked probably almost 3 miles that morning. And so I mean, I was getting in there, and it was break of daylight is what it was. It was break of daylight. I'm walking into this hollow, and the area that I was in, it was called Buffalo, which was at the base of Sandplant Hill, and I have another story in my book about that too. But so I'm walking into this holler, and it's break of daylight, and I'm looking at the trail, and I'm going up, and you could see the top of the ridges, and you know that if there's anything moving on the top of the ridge line, you're going to see the silhouette. If there's any deer moving or something, you're going to see a silhouette of them, and you know to hunker down, sit still, and wait for it to get light enough to shoot. So I'm walking up through there, and I'm looking at the top of the ridge lines as I'm going up. There's a creek that run down beside of me, and so you couldn't really hear anything. It wasn't a
Right.
rushing creek, but there was just enough noise off of the creek that it masked any distant noises. So, and I'm watching, I'm looking. I mean, I have to pay attention where I'm going to. So I'm just occasionally glancing up and just looking around and stuff. And I seen movement on top of the ridge up to my right, which was probably 175 yards from me, something like that. See movement up there. So I stopped because that's what I'm supposed to do. I stop, and I'm just standing there. And I seen it looked like it was walking on all fours. Okay. And then it seemed to me that it stood up, and it stopped. And I couldn't tell because all I could see was really the silhouette.
Right.
And it stopped, like maybe it seen me. And then just out of nowhere, it leaped behind this tree. Okay. And I'm like, I'm thinking, holy shit, what the hell was that? Because
Exactly.
when I seen it walking on all fours, and it stood up, I immediately thought, well, that's a big black bear. Okay. And then when it leaped, I'm like, what the hell was that? You know, because I've shared this
Exactly.
before, that I, honest to God, when I was a young man, I didn't know anything about Bigfoot. Um, when someone said Bigfoot, I thought of the monster truck. That's the Bigfoot that I
Right.
knew. I didn't know that guy that's in the picture behind you. Okay.
Mhm.
We were
Right.
told stories of wild men being in the mountains, hermits, they called hermits. Hairy
Right.
humans is how they
Hmm.
described them. A human that was hair, and they were wild men. And never once ever called them Bigfoot or Sasquatch or boogers or anything like that. But I seen it leap from where it was standing, just leaped in behind a tree. And I can't judge how far it was, but I'd say it was a good 15 foot. Okay. Cause I
Right.
wasn't no way, there was no way in hell I was walking up that hill after I seen it do that. So I stood still, and I'm watching, and and, and honest to God, I pulled my gun up a few times to look through the scope, to look up there, not to shoot, but to look up
Hmm.
there and see if I could see anything, because everything, it's always a little brighter in your scope because of the parallax
Oh
and the
yeah.
lenses. It's always a little brighter.
Right.
And that's how I've always stayed a little bit later than I should hunting in the woods, because like in my scope, it's still shooting light, you know,
Oh
to
yeah.
me.
Well,
But
I'm the same way. If I've got enough light that I can, make out what I'm shooting at, I'll stay till that light and that scope
oh,
gets
absolutely.
gone.
Yeah.
Where, yeah.
So I'm sitting there, and I'm watching, and probably within a matter of 3 to 5 minutes later, whatever was behind that tree jumped over to the next tree, which was a further distance, mind you.
Hmm.
Okay. And I'm thinking, is this some kind of gorilla? I mean, is this some kind of, because like, I mean, that's the only thing I know that would do something like that. But it honestly just from one spot leaped to the other spot and disappeared. Now, I didn't see it anymore. It's like it never moved from that spot. Now, did it take that tree that was using for cover and go straight back down the other side? Most likely. Um,
Yep.
but there was never any other movement. And I sat there until it was stone cold daylight. I wasn't moving from that spot. The honest to God, I was scared shitless because
Oh, anybody would.
yeah, you seen something like that. Now, I've told y'all before, I've never seen a Sasquatch. And for the viewers that are watching, I mean, I don't proclaim to have ever seen a Sasquatch, but I promise you that morning was probably the closest I've ever been to seeing one. I seen something. It wasn't a bear.
Hmm.
Bears don't leap. I mean,
No,
even circus bears don't leap, you know,
no,
and they're trained. So was it a deer? No, it stood up. You know what I mean? So some people say, well, a deer can jump over a log or something like that. But yeah, but a deer doesn't stand up and jump over the log. Um,
no.
so it was something. And was it a Sasquatch? Most likely. Was it a dog man? Maybe. I mean, I just don't know. Um,
Right.
but I stayed until it was daylight, and I walked up into that holler where I was at. I mean, after a little while, I started, I quit shaking and stuff, and I figured I'll going up in this holler, um, and I shot a deer that morning, and so I wind up coming back down and dragging the deer back down, and I had to drag it back past the spot where all that happened. And man, I'm gonna tell you, I'm coming down off of that because it's pretty steep going up that trail, going up in there. But once you get up so far, it kind of flattens off, and the whole top of the ridge and all that stuff is kind of flats. And but coming back down through that, you're up as high as that one ridge, and I just
Hmm.
constantly was watching that ridge when I'm coming down, and I'm thinking if I see something move, I'm dropping this deer and I'm running because I'm done with this.
Absolutely.
And
Oh yeah. Let him
to
have
be
it and
on,
go.
to be honest with you, I never hunted that holler again. Um, when I did finally, I moved. When my mom, and my stepfather split up, I moved out of that area, and eventually I wound up getting married and stuff, and had this kid up here that's in above you. Um, but I mean, I become a father at the age of 19, um, so we didn't live in the woods anymore. We lived in town. So
Mhm.
so I started hunting in areas that wasn't so far for me to drive, and they were rural areas, around homes and stuff like that. Um, so like in West Virginia, it's a little different than North Carolina. I mean, the laws are basically the same, but people are different. Now, I don't know how it is over
Oh
in
yeah.
Western. I don't know how it is over in Western North Carolina, but I know the I live in the Piedmont area. Okay,
Hmm.
so I'm like 2 hours from you guys. But over here, when I first moved down here, the very first deer season, I had a knock on my door from the game warden. And it's not that I break laws, but
Right.
In West Virginia, you can be driving down the road. You're going to go and find you some place to hunt. And there's a wide spot there, and you pull off in that wide spot, and you just jump into the woods and you go hunting. I mean,
Exactly.
unless it's posted property, honestly, nobody gives a crap. So
Right.
and if they do, they see your car there, they'll go down there and they'll sit and blow the horn until you come back out, and then they'll tell you, hey, I don't want you hunting in there, and that's fine
Right.
too, because I'm not big on trespassing on other people's property that don't want me there, and honestly, I wouldn't do it if there
Me
was a
either.
posted sign. I'd never go into it. But I have hunted that in that shape, in that manner most of my life. Um, so when I moved down here, we moved into this development, and it was nice street, nice home. I mean, really nice. But back over behind me, dude, was 1,000 acres, just untouched. I mean, nice. and I didn't see any post-it signs. There was no purple painted trees or anything like that. So I went in before season and I cleared me out a nice spot and I set up my blinds and two blinds. I set me up two feeders within quarter mile of each other, and stuff like that. And so I had two locations to go to and wasn't hurting anyone. And I wasn't in there walking around all over the woods and misbehaving or leaving trash or anything like that. I was just trying to feed my family because
Yeah.
my family has been dependent on what we have killed for many generations. And
Oh
so
yeah.
I mean, I've hunted all my life, and since I was 9 years old. I was hunting at 9 years old. Honest to goodness, my mom bought me a 20 gauge shotgun on my 10-year-old birthday, and I would just take my shotgun and I go hunting at 10 years old in the woods in West Virginia.
Oh
Nobody
yeah.
went with me. Nobody went with me. Now, would I let my 10-year-old, because I got a boy that's going to be 10 here before long, would I let him go in the woods with a shotgun? No, no, it's a different world we live in
Mm.
today. But
Yes, it is.
here in North Carolina, things are a little different. So
Hmm.
I had went in. It was let's see, what was it? It was muzzle loading season and bow. It's still bow season was still in, but it was muzzle loading season, and I had went in early morning and I hunted half a day, and I seen some nice deer come in. Honestly, some nice deer. I could have shot a deer, and I had a 16 point on game cam that
Ooh.
dude, I mean, I got huge. I got pictures of him. He was massive, and so I went in. I hunted, and I'm looking for this deer. I wanted to get him because I knew when rifle season come in, he was good as gone. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
he was good as gone. So I opted out not shooting those deer and ruining my chance. Possibly he was coming in behind one of the does or something like that. So I didn't, and I don't horn hunt. But I don't know a single hunter on this planet that would turn down a deer that freaking big. Okay, if
I
you know
know I
he's
would.
in there, if you know he's in there, you're not going to do anything to ruin your chance until either you know that you figure you haven't seen him anymore on your camera or anything. You're going to wait for that deer. Now near the end of the season, if you haven't got him, then yeah, you'll shoot other deer and take your meat and stuff. But
Yeah.
anyways, so I hunted half a day. I called my buddy when I was coming out and I said, "Hey man, I'm only hunting half a day. If you want to come in and hunt out my blind the other half of the day," I said, "You're welcome to." I said, "I'm going to take my family and we're going to go and get some food for lunch or something like that." So we went to this pizza place here in this town, and we'd almost finished, and he calls me, and I'm like, "Hey man," I said, "Did you get one?" He's like, "No." He's like, "Man," he's like, "I need you to come and help me drag all this stuff out." And I'm like, "What do you mean drag all this stuff out?" He's like, "Man," he's like, "I'm kind of hurting right now." He says, "This guy come in here on a four-wheeler." He said, "And just plowed into the blind." I was sitting inside the blind. He said he just plowed into it. Said, "Knocked me plumb out of my
Wow.
chair." He said he broke the limb on my bow, my crossbow. He hit him
Mm.
so hard he ran over, knocked the crossbow out of his hands, and it run over it and broke his crossbow.
Man,
And
wow.
he come out of there. This friend was an ex deputy sheriff, a friend of mine, and he
Hmm.
and he's handicapped. So he walks. He doesn't walk that well. He walks with a cane, and he walked
Hmm.
in there. He walked in there, and I had gave him pictures of what the trail looked like to go in. Okay, so he
Right.
knew when he got down there to it, yeah, that's where he'd go. And so I'm like, "Yeah, man." I said, I'm 3 minutes from my house." I said, I told everybody, I said, grab your stuff, let's go. So I get there and I grab my pistol and I put my pistol on my side. And I get on my four-wheeler and I run up there and I hit and I see him. Here's my buddy. He's got his bow up under his arm. He's dragging my blind, and he's got well, he's got my blind in his hand that's folded up. He's got his bow under his arm, and he's dragging my feeder. Okay,
Mm.
and this guy's behind him on a four-wheeler, just riding behind him, putting behind him. Now this guy was, pardon my language, everyone. This guy was an a-hole
Yeah.
because he could see this man was clearly disabled. This man,
Mm-hmm.
he'd already hurt this guy, hitting him with a four-wheeler, and this guy wouldn't even haul that stuff out of there for him, you know. So I can classify that as an a-hole. So
Oh,
so he's almost to the road. I pull up right there in front of him, and I said, man, just lay that stuff down. I said, just lay that stuff down. I said, go and just go over by the four-wheeler. And I walked up to this guy and I'm like, hey man, I understand that you have a lease on this, because he told my friend that I have all this leased. I said, I understand you have a lease on this. I said, I didn't see any no trespassing signs. I said, I apologize. And I said, is there any way you could let me in on a lease? I said, I'll pay you part of the lease. I said, all I need is an acre there to hunt on, you know.
mm-hmm.
I said, because I don't walk and stalk. I have my blind, I hunt at my blind, and I'm good to go with that. And he's like, absolutely not. I'm like, okay. I said, I'll be willing to pay, the pay my part and everything. And he's like, no. He's like, I'm not interested in that. And I was like, okay. So I walk back over to my four wheeler, and I get on my four wheeler, and I said, well, I got to go in there and get my other blind and feeder. He's like, you're not going back in there. And I unsnapped my pistol. I said, I'm going back in there. I said, I'm getting my feeder and my blind. And I just start my four wheeler and I take off and I ride right past him. And I go in
Mm-hmm.
there and I'm hauling ass going in there too. So I get to where it was and I hear his four wheeler going across the main trail. He's coming in looking for me, and I pack up my blind and I get my feeder. And I dumped the corn out the pile right there where the feeder was. And I strap it all on my four wheeler and I come back out and I pull up to the trail and I see him coming. And I just pull back out and I go down and I told my buddy, just leave all that stuff there. I said, I'll come back down with my truck and get it. And I went to my house and took stuff off my four wheeler, got my truck, went down there, and that guy's like, "Well, I'm gonna call the game warden on you, yada yada yada. You trespassed even after I told you not to be in there." And I said, "Buddy," I said, "I don't care who you call." I said, "You can call whoever you want to." I said, "That was my property." I said, "You're an asshole." Pardon my language. I said, "You're an asshole."
Mm-hmm.
I said, "And you're not going to keep my property." I said, "I understand that I was trespassing." I said, "I don't deny that now that you've told me that you have this leased land." I said, "But you didn't have it posted." He said, "Well, there's posted signs." I said, "I ain't seen a single one." And I said, "I've walked the whole front side of this property." And the law is it's got to be, what is it? Every 150 feet, there's got to be a sign or a painted
Something
mark.
like that.
So,
Mm-hmm.
and there was none of that. Okay. So I get my stuff and my buddy and I go back to my house and I just lived right down the street. So we're thinking everything's all good, and I wind up taking him back to his car where he'd parked at, and I went home. I went to work. No, I didn't either. It was weekend. I went scouting to try to find me another place to hunt the next day is what it was. And because
Yeah.
I'm dead on, trying to get some deer. So and like I said, I hadn't lived here 6 months, man. I hadn't lived in North Carolina
Mm-hmm.
6 months. So I'm out looking around, and my wife calls me, and she's like, "You're gonna need to come home." I'm like, "Okay." She's like, "DNR was just here, and he said that he'll be back in an hour." I'm like, "Okay." So I hightail it, and I come back home, and I go in, and um, he shows back up, and he says, "Mr. Webb," he says, he's like, "I have a well." He named me right off the bat. He knew who I was,
Mm.
and that's because he'd got my license plate number. But
Right.
he's like, "Mr. Webb," he said, "I have a report that you were trespassing, you were hunting on private property, and he says without permission." He says, "And I have to let you know that's illegal." And I said, "Yes," I said, "I understand that." I said, "Sir," I'm like, it wasn't posted. Um, I said, "I'm from West Virginia. This is my first season hunting here." I said, "And in West Virginia, that's how we hunt. If it's not posted, then we can hunt on it.
Hmm.
That's how I was raised." He's like, "Well, I'm gonna need your license and your he says, "and your hunting license." So I give that to him. He's like, "Well, where's your hunter safety card?" I said, "Sir," I said, "I don't need a hunter safety card." I said, "In West Virginia, I was grandfathered. If you were born before a certain year, then you didn't have to have it." He's like, "Well, everybody in North Carolina has to have a hunter safety card." I'm like, "So you mean to tell me that I've hunted for 40 plus years, and now I have to have a hunter safety card because I moved to North Carolina?" And he said, "Yes, sir." I said, "Well, I don't have one." I said, "I don't plan on getting one either."
Hmm.
He's like, "Well, how'd you buy a license without it?" And I'm like, "I didn't put it on there." I said, "I bought my license online." And he says, "Okay." So he lets that go. Okay.
Hmm.
He lets that go. And he's like, "Well, what were you doing hunting on posted property?" And I said, "Sir," I said, it wasn't, I said, "there was no posted signs." He said, "Well, what if I was to tell you there are posted signs?" I'm like, "Well, I'd be interested in seeing them." I said, "Because I never seen a single posted sign." So he's like, "Well, get in my truck." So I get in the truck with him, and he just runs me right over there to it. And we pull up to the trail that I'd went into,
Hmm.
and lo and behold, there are two posted signs on a tree on each side. One on this one on this one. And you can plainly see the signs are old. They're old and they're faded. Okay. He's like,
Hmm.
"It looks like it's been up there a while." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "It does look like they've been up there a while." I said, "But what about those new screws that are holding those up there? The shiny new screws." And this guy had took old post-it signs and took the silver screws and put them back in there. And
Yep.
you could tell they were brand new. And
Hmm.
he walks over and he looks at those screws, and he says, he says, "You got a point." I said, "Yeah." I said, "I'm telling you, those signs are not there." And then it come to me, the picture that I had sent my buddy.
Hmm.
I told that officer, I said, "Well," I said, "Yeah," I said, "but what if I could show you those signs wasn't there?" He said, "I'd be interested in seeing that." I said, "Well, let's go back to my house." I said, "I got some pictures for you." So I invite him into my house, and which will not a lot of people will invite the game warden into your house. You know what I mean? Once you invite them in, they're there. But I invited
Oh
him
yeah.
into my house because I had nothing to hide. And went right to my computer, turned it on, and brought up the Facebook message, and boom, there was the picture, and there were no signs.
Hmm.
And you seen that guy? He turned a couple of different shades of red. That DNR officer was pissed,
Hmm.
and he said, "Mr. Webb," he says, "I'm sorry that I bothered you." He says, "But I'm going to have, and I'm not going to give the gentleman's name." He said, I'm going to go now and have me a conversation with this guy." And he says, "And find out why he lied to me." So I bet you that feller got in some trouble. But
I'd say he probably did.
I got out of it without with just a warning telling me not to hunt on private property anymore, and I've heeded that warning ever since. Hence, I have a story that's in my book, the new book that's coming out October the
Mhm.
1st, about an encounter. It's the only encounter that's in North Carolina in that book. All the rest of the stuff that go in there, there's some folklore in that book. There's some true eyewitness encounters that are in that book, and there's some legends that are in that book. But there's one story that's in that book that I felt needed to be put in there, and it was an encounter that I had in Perkins Game Land. And I'm
Mhm.
sure I've spoke to y'all about that on NCI's TV station. And
Right.
so I mean, if people are interested, they can get that book and they can read that about what me and my son heard in the middle of the woods, in the middle of nowhere in Perkins Game Land. So it's pretty interesting. Um, it's a pretty interesting thing. So I mean, people need to be cautious, even in the LBL, about where they go,
Mhm.
because if it says it's a restricted area, and that's why I told this story. If it says it's a restricted area, then that means don't go in there. That means absolutely do not go in there. And as I said, I'm taking a drone, and I plan on flying my drone up, and my drone can't read that restricted area sign from 300 foot up in the air. You know what I mean? So,
Oh yeah,
I
and
mean,
plus on top of that, in my opinion, if unless it's they're extremely touchy on everything. In my opinion, if you've got a drone in the air, you personally are not trespassing. The drone is.
no, it doesn't say
And
restricted
drone,
airspace. If
right?
it says restricted airspace, then you got a problem.
Yeah, yeah,
But
you got a
that was
problem.
part
But
of
I mean, if you want to put the drone in a human perspective, drone's not trespassing because you can't.
no, no, sure isn't. I mean, it's not going to be too long if they don't already have them already that are going to be flew by AI. You're going to tell it where to go, and it'll just go there. Or you want to tell it what area to look at, and it'll just fly over there and look at it and come back to you and tell you what it found. I mean,
I
Yeah.
actually I need to check that whole airspace thing because that Southgate, it's pretty close to um one of the Fort Campbell airfields here. Because Fort Campbell it's just so big, they have multiple airfields. So I will get on that and check.
well,
Um,
there's a thing about that, Trisha. If you look into restricted airspace, airspace is only restricted at certain heights. So,
Mhm.
so like if I'm flying top of the trees, I'm not breaking restricted airspace.
No,
okay.
It's only allowed
if you're
now.
flying at
Now
chest high, they can't say nothing.
I was just
they
gonna double check just to make just to make sure, because I want to do this, but I want to not get arrested.
yeah. Well, I mean, if I get arrested, then I get arrested, but I'll have some video evidence.
I'll see if I've got bail money.
Yeah, yeah. To my understanding,
One
and
less than military, I can get arrested.
I'm not a lawyer or anything like that. To my understanding, it has to mention drones. If it says restricted airspace, no, it's got to say no drones or any aircraft allowed. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Um, but if it just says restricted area, that means that area itself is restricted, not the air above that area. So
exactly.
there
Just
may
say
be
just say
there
it's a
may be an
UFO.
attorney there may be an attorney or a YouTube attorney or a Facebook attorney or somebody that tells us different in the comments on these videos. But
Oh yeah,
as of between right now, the 13th of September and October the 6th, I'm going with what I know, you know.
Yeah.
exactly.
Uh, so I plan on taking it in there, and if anything, it'll sit in the back seat of my truck. But I'll have it if I decide I need to
Mhm.
use it. But especially if I'm telling you right now, if we're in there and we hear some noises, uh, you know, something answers us back during the day or something like that. Don't think for a second I'm not shooting that drone straight up into the air and going the towards the noise, and zoomed in as close as I can get it, because I I told my wife today when we were on the way back home. I told her, I said, you might think I'm crazy. I'm sure a lot of my friends on Facebook and stuff, because I'm posting all this stuff, they may think that I'm crazy. They might think, Rob, you're crazy. They probably already know Trisha's a little crazy. But
Yeah.
but because I post this stuff. But I told my wife, I said, I'd like to be the one. I would like to be the one that finds significant evidence that they can't deny.
Exactly.
And
I'm the same way.
and yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's people like us that are pounding the dirt. Um,
Hmm.
we're on a search for that evidence. Okay, and I always use the references that they thought silverback gorillas were extinct until they found them in the Congo in the 80s.
Exactly.
They thought they were completely extinct and had been extinct for many decades, and they found them
Well,
thriving in the Congo.
same way with the Billy ape. They thought they were extinct too till they discovered them 15
Yeah,
years ago.
yeah, yeah. I mean, um, some people say that Bigfoot is a gigantopithecus. I
Hmm.
mean, I don't know if I believe that or not, but I mean, it matches the description. And they say they've been extinct for millions of years. Okay, but are they? Ask yourself that: are they extinct? Is the Sasquatch that we know of an ancestor of something such as the Gigantopithecus? I mean, you have all different types of monkeys. We'll call them monkeys, okay, and apes and stuff like
Hmm.
that. Okay, they're still labeled under the same thing. All apes are labeled under apes. All monkeys are labeled under monkeys. They're monkeys and there's apes,
Right.
okay? But they're so closely related to each other
Hmm.
that they're still the same thing. You know, they say that a chimpanzee is only one gene different from a human in the
Exactly.
DNA. Okay, so why couldn't it be? Okay, that doesn't mean that we evolved from apes, which I have my own thing on that. We're not going to go into the whole thing on that, but that
Yeah.
doesn't mean that we
Don't get
evolved
me
from apes.
started on that.
But 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 we're so close to that, and then you hear about DNA. Everybody's like, well, where's the DNA? Where's the DNA? Well, I'm here to tell you that DNA has been found. It's out there. It's been sent in. DNA has come back. Unknown primate, and it's found traces of human DNA in it. Okay.
Exactly.
Then people that see a Sasquatch, they say, well, it's human like. Its face looks like human. Its nose is different,
Hmm.
but its face is humanoid. And
Yep.
but it's hairy. It's like if a human and a chimpanzee had a baby. You know what I mean? I mean,
Exactly.
oh, we don't even want to think about that. But um, it's 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 that close. Okay, so
Hmm.
who's to say we had Neanderthals? Okay, I mean, we've had all the. You look at the evolutionary chain. Okay,
Hmm.
and all the different versions of ourselves. Okay, why is why is it that the thought that maybe Gigantopithecus is extinct, but it's evolved to a certain point, you know. And they say all the animals on this continent came across the land bridges. Okay,
Right.
that's how they're finding dinosaurs in Utah.
Mhm.
Okay, because all these continents was one big huge continent at one time. So why can't it
Right.
be here? Why can't it be an ancestor of a Gigantopithecus, an evolved ancestor of a Gigantopithecus? I mean, but now I'm probably going to hell for referring to it as a Gigantopithecus, because a lot of people are like, oh no, it's not that. They've been extinct to millions of years and all this. But so has the Neanderthal. And we
Exactly.
evolved from a Neanderthal if you look at the evolutionary chain. Now it's different from what the Bible
Mhm.
says, okay? But me and you'll talk about all what my thoughts on that is another day, because like, I don't want
Right.
to sound completely crazy on my first podcast. But let's wait to the second one at least. Um, but I mean, so there's a possibility, okay? If the Neanderthal was extinct millions of years ago, but we're sitting here right now podcasting on this TV, over YouTube and Facebook. We're sitting here right
Right.
now and we're ancestors of Neanderthal, you know. Um,
Exactly.
why can't a Sasquatch be an ancestor of a Gigantopithecus? And
Sounds
they're
possible to
not
me.
as they're not as plentiful as human beings are, but they're out there. You
Right.
know, if they were as plentiful as a human being, everybody'd see one. You see them every
Mhm.
day. You'd be going to Starbucks in the morning and pass one when you're going across the intersection. I mean,
Oh yeah.
so
That would be the dream.
yeah, I don't know. I mean,
Well, I'll tell you something other else too. On the flip side of the coin, they claim that megalodon has been extinct for I don't go into this 640 million year theory and all this other bunch of nonsense that a lot of them are spewing. But if that creature has been extinct, why are we still finding intact teeth that's being washed up on the beaches, as violent as our oceans are, and as
mhm,
dangerous as the underwater environment is between the coral and everything else? Shouldn't those teeth either be A, embedded in coral that's being found, or B, ground into dust as violent as our oceans are? Why are these teeth still, 6 inches wide by, ever how many inches long they are? They're sort of, blackened a little bit, but they still have the core DNA in them.
mhm,
Why are we still finding those if that creature is supposed to be extinct? Shouldn't we be finding, minute fragments and guessing that's what it is?
mhm,
Or find it, embedded in coral where it's lodged over time, like the supposed dinosaur bones that's being found in Utah, Grand Canyon, Australia, and,
mhm,
the Congo and all these other places. Those have been, placed by nature and sort of been preserved to a point. These teeth that's floating around, they're not being preserved. They're at the mercy of the ocean, and any sailor or scuba diver will tell you that environment can change at the flick of a switch,
mm,
unannounced and no warning. So why are we still finding these teeth? Because we're finding great white teeth, bull shark teeth, and these other species out here that are, as perfect as the megalodon's teeth are, that's supposed to be extinct, but yet you find a shark and you can look at it and go, well, that shark lost that tooth about 2 weeks ago. Well, in 2 weeks' time, that tooth ought to have some damage on it.
yeah, yeah. Well,
It just doesn't make sense.
it's one of those wonders that we'll never know. It's like people don't look for answers. they have a lot of questions, but they don't look for answers. We look for answers, but the people that make the decisions are not happy with our answers. Okay, and they don't want to answer our questions. The people that don't look for the answers already know the truth, you know. And like there's been reports of very large sharks out in the ocean. Okay. And you got to think that we've only explored like 26% of our ocean. I think it's somewhere in that general ballpark, so don't quote me on that. But like, so another 74% of our ocean we haven't explored. We still don't know what's in the deep part of the ocean, and like the Mariachi Trench and stuff like that. We don't know
Hmm.
what's down there. So, I mean, there could be a
No,
Sasquatch swimming down there. That could be their home. They could be teleporting through portals from the bottom of the ocean, in the lost city of Atlantis or something. I mean, we don't
no,
know.
I mean, no, and furthermore, everybody goes to saying, well, you got to trust the science. Well, not trying to get a fight sparked or anything for that matter. We've seen what science did and how people reacted during COVID.
Ab- it's funny,
Mm-hmm.
Rob. I was getting ready to
And
say that trust the science, but yet we have the COVID vaccination that was supposed to cure COVID. Okay,
ah,
so I mean,
all
yeah,
right,
trust
well,
the science.
you take the trust the science crew. If anything goes against the monetized science, they're not going to listen to that because it's going to interfere and disrupt with every bit of that dollar sign that's coming in to that one certain area.
Hmm.
And these scientists today, I mean, don't get me wrong, science is real. Science needs to, it's on a daily basis and everything else. But when you go to paying somebody to tell you what you want to hear and become an instant Bill Nye, Bill Clinton, if you catch my drift,
Yes, I
tell
do.
you what you want to hear and getting paid to do it, there's not a bit more truth in it than Man on the Confounded Moon. Because if you want to trust science, the only way you can trust science, you have to question science in order to find the answer. Science is not always black and white. It's not what you think. Take, for instance, there for a little bit, there's a huge blow up over it when they had those aliens in that mall down there in Florida. Well, everything all of a sudden just daggum hushed. Well, if there's any truth behind it, why are people not still talking about it? It's just a forbidden subject now. It's like, no, no, you ain't supposed to talk about stuff like that. Well,
Okay. Well,
really? Why not?
2 weeks ago, the government was dead set on aliens don't exist. Okay. Well, they did come out and said that aliens, unidentified flying objects, or whatever they label it now. We grew up calling them UFOs. They have a new word for them now. But so they exist, but aliens don't exist. Okay, so they want to say all of these sightings that people had over these years of UFOs, aliens, and so on and so forth, that's not true. But yeah, we've just realized that we have video evidence of unidentified flying objects. Then they released a video, and it's been all over Facebook, of a drone shooting a Hellcat missile at this UFO and it bouncing off of it. It didn't explode. It just bounced off it, ricocheted off of it, and went elsewhere. Okay, and
Right.
now
Hmm.
Congress and everybody is going stark raving mad over that.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and I'm sure that a lot of people, there's probably nobody that hasn't seen it because it's been, excuse me, it's been all over Facebook feeds and stuff of that. And then them questioning Senate and stuff like that. The Senate questioning other people about it. They want answers and so on and so forth, because a lot of those guys are not in the privy. They don't have the access to that information either, because it's all hush hush. It's just like the dog man in the LBL. It's
Yep.
like the Sasquatch that's all over the United States. It's in the hush hush, and I
Mhm.
really have to be cautious of what I say, because Trisha here, she does live in Fort Campbell, so there'd be people watching her streams. But
Screaming
I might,
eagles.
yeah, I might disappear. If I disappear tomorrow, you know what happened. But but yeah, I can just say, but don't go by. And I'll make this our closing statement. We've been going now for an hour and 6 minutes. I mean, 2 hours and 6 minutes. Doesn't seem like that
Wow, we
long.
have it.
Yeah. But I'll leave this as my closing statement. You know, don't trust what they tell you. Trust what you know.
Exactly.
Trust what you feel deep down inside of your gut. Okay. And it doesn't matter if your neighbor thinks you're crazy, because when the truth comes out, they're going to be the crazy ones. And
Yep.
we'll leave it
Exactly.
at that. And well, everybody, I want to thank everyone that's came out to watch our podcast. I know this is the first one, so there's been some nervous feelings and stuff like that between myself and Trisha, but I promise it'll get better. But it'll always be truthful, and we're here to tell you what we know, um, what we speculate, and what we can prove. And so at that, I'm going to say goodnight, and we'll see you next week.